Hello, this is Jessi Sletten from Empowering Postpartum, and welcome to the Spanglish World Networks on Zingo TV, channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download both the Zingo TV app on the respective app stores on iOS and Android devices. And while you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is totally free. Zingo TV can also be found on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire Sticks, Roku and Roku Sticks, and on all smart TVs 2016 and forward. Welcome to Empowering Postpartum with me, Jessi Sletten, your postpartum empowerment coach, helping you feel confident, prepared, and holistically supported for your unique journey into parenthood. I'm really excited to dive into this episode today because we're going to be spilling all the tea on raising babies and businesses. And Molly Claire, best-selling author and master life and business coach, is joining me today to talk all about finding that sweet spot with balancing mom and entrepreneur life. So Molly, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. I think that there can't be enough support for women juggling these two really important areas of their lives.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I feel like that there isn't much support out there
I know,
other
right?
than what we, know to be available because we're in this field, right? But I feel like so many of us are like so much of, our pregnancy and postpartum experience is really just lacking as far as resources go. So I'm really excited about this episode because I think this will
Yeah.
be a wonderful resource for all sorts of parents entering into their pregnancy or maternity leave or getting ready to leave maternity leave. So I think this is going to be a really great conversation. So I'm excited.
Yes, me too.
So why don't we get started and just kick things off with you sharing a little bit about yourself, what you do,
Mhm.
how today's topic resonates with you and your own personal journey, and we'll just go from there.
Yeah, so many things. Um, I'm a mom of 3. I'm at the point in my life where my oldest are 21, 19, and then my youngest is 13. So
Okay.
I'm past the baby
Yes.
stage, and, um, as such, I my hope is to bring really good perspective to people juggling these two, parts of their life, specifically with, kids and business and all of that. And
Yeah.
so professionally, I'm a coach, and I worked for several years specifically with moms who were overwhelmed with the demands and the responsibilities. And I wrote my book, The Happy Mom Mindset, which is really geared to support women in the book doesn't speak to the business part of it, which I know we're talking about today, right? But
Yeah.
the happy mom mindset is really that support for women figuring out how can it possibly be that I can successfully raise kids and not be so overwhelmed, not
Yeah.
feel like I'm a failure all the time. How do I do this well? And so anyway, I spent several years focusing on women, helping women with that area of their life. And what I do now, which I'll make very relevant to this conversation today to those of you listening, is I actually support coaches in being able to be more effective in supporting their clients. And I
Yeah.
do this with a holistic view, right? So as you're talking with your clients here, and as or your listeners, right, as you all are listening about how do you support yourself in a more whole view of your life, a whole person, a woman, a mother, a spouse, a business owner, if in the context of this, right? Or whatever you do professionally or not, just knowing that that you are a whole person, and it is
Yes.
super important to make sure that you have the support you need in all areas of your life. So the bottom line is I'm super passionate about helping coaches to be effective in supporting people and making change in their lives, in building a business. And one of the big things that I focus on from the beginning with my clients is how do we make sure that your business is supporting your personal life?
Mm,
Because I mean, that's the thing, right? We have these different areas of our life, and too often they seem like they're in competition. And I just don't believe they need to be. Whoever, like all of your listeners right now, it is possible for you to do those things that are most important to you and do them well
mm.
without spreading yourself thin and believing you have to do it all. So
Yes.
That's the big pick. That's it in a nutshell.
I love that so much. And I think that that's a really needed area, especially in the coaching industry, because it feels like everybody and their mom is jumping on the coaching bandwagon. And
Yeah,
while
yeah,
I think that there are extremely effective coaches out there and there are people who are passionate, they get into this work because they're passionate about helping other people. I think it's super valuable to have a mentor who can show you the way on how to be more effective in your coaching. And so that you're really giving your all to your clients, and that's why we do what we do. So it's important that we feel like we are making a difference and we know what we're doing, and we have the
yes.
tools to be able to teach what we need to teach
Yes, right?
effectively.
Because our clients are counting on us. Like
Yes.
all of you listening here, you're here because you have a need, right? There is something in your life that feels off or where you need some support. And I just think so many people struggle with so many things behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And I think as coaches, like what a beautiful gift and responsibility to really support people in their lives and making their lives better, right? Bringing a
Yes.
little more
Yes.
joy, a little more connection and relationships, and really being able to help each person, fulfill their unique mission and purpose in the world. So it's
Yes.
really important work. It matters.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned something really important that I think a lot of moms in particular struggle with, and that is reaching out for that help and
Mhm.
being vulnerable enough to say, like, you know what? I'm not thriving, and I would love to be able to do that and still be able to
Mhm.
support my kids. Something that I always say is,
Mhm.
we don't have to be a martyr to our motherhood, even though that is what society kind of places on a pedestal for us women, right? When we kind of enter into this parenting journey, it's like, okay, it's all about the kids now. Like, you get to step back, it's not your time, all these things, these messages we get. And so when we have that spark within us, when we're like, you know what, I still want this piece, maybe my work, because that's kind of the context we're talking about, right? That part is
Mhm.
important to me. Like, I'm passionate about that. It's a part of who I am, and I still want that in my life. Why do I have to step back from that and just put everything into being mom, right? Instead of, I think there's this place for and. We can be a mom and we can be our individual self who still has wants and needs and passions and has something to contribute to the world outside of our home, right? And so
Yes.
I'd love for us to kind of touch on that and maybe some things that you recommend or tips that you can give to the viewers on how you can make room for the and in life.
Mhm. Mhm. So one thing I want to emphasize that is super important that we remember is that I think as women, we can mistakenly think that having the and means we do it all, we take it
Mhm.
all on, and we get in
Yeah.
this place of spreading ourselves thin. And we think, I
Yeah.
can have it all, I can do it all. And so it's like the only way in our mind, the only way we can have the things we want is to become some superhuman version of ourselves that's not
Yeah.
possible, that's stressful and exhausting. So I
Yeah.
first want to highlight that. Like, I agree 100% with what Jessi is saying here. And I want to have this conversation about how you can have the the things that you want, and there can be
Mm.
that and I want to tell you that it does not mean it is not the same as doing it all, being it all, and spreading yourself
Yes.
thin. So let's just check that box now. So no
Agree.
one has to be stressed out, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So, yeah, I think as you were talking, I think what's so important for moms to remember is that you are not supposed to be a mom like anyone else. And the good news about this is that the way you are, especially the way you are when you feel alive and you have that spark in you, that is when your unique version of being a mom will come out. And
Mm.
so, not only do I believe full heartedly that it's possible for you to have your own passion and to be the best mom, but actually, I believe that when you are alive and when you are within your passion and your work,
Mm.
that is when you will truly be the very best version of mom that you can be. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of like, it's almost like, I don't know if you've ever heard this concept of the zone of excellence and then the zone of genius. And it's this
Yes.
idea, right? Like this, you can be excellent at something, but when you're in your zone of genius, it's just like, wow, like mind blowing magic, right? You are
Yeah.
phenomenal at what you're doing and everything is easier. And I kind of think the same thing. I think we can kind of white knuckle through being a mom and people
Mm,
can be in a zone of excellence, but how stressed out are they? Right.
right.
And when we're not making room for that piece of, whatever your passion is, right? Like in your
Right.
business, having that purpose. I know I can just say for me that genuinely, my kids, I may have a lot of flaws. I may not be the most organized and I may not
Right.
be a laundry list of things as a mom, right?
Mm,
But what I will say is that my kids know when they see me in the morning, I'm excited. I'm
mm.
connecting with them. We have a good time. My daughter and I have, we call it a waffle party every morning where we connect.
Oh,
And it's kind of like that is the reason all that matters is that's who I am, right?
yeah.
And believe me, when I am bogged down and stressed out, I just can't be that way. And
Yeah.
so I think I know I'm kind of going on and on about this, but those of you listening, like think about those things that make you feel alive and bring that passion. And especially like if that is your business, you do not have to feel guilty or bad about that. Be excited that you
Mm.
know what you can do to enhance your life. And then your kids just get the benefit of having a mom that is just full of purpose and will benefit them so much more than you could otherwise.
Oh my God, I love that so much. It's so true because it's like, when we're not feeling fulfilled, when we're not feeling like we have that sense of purpose and that higher calling, whatever you want to call it, it really does start to have this trickle down effect into how we are interacting within our other relationships, right? Because we're
Yep.
not good with ourselves. We're not connected to ourselves, our purpose, our passion. And so how can we authentically connect fully with the ones that we love, right? And I'm not saying that, there isn't that connection or bond. There
Right.
is, but are you really fully, like you said, showing up the most, authentically, the most fulfilled, the most connective when you don't have that piece for yourself? And what a
Mhm.
beautiful gift to give our kids to show that we can have this passion for something and we go for it. We're doing it. We're doing our dream. We're driving for that. And that is so incredibly powerful for our kids to see
Yes.
that as well.
Yes. And I just wanna say really quickly because I know how our mom brains think, and if any of you listening are already telling you like, feeling bad or guilty or thinking, "Oh, I should have pursued my passion more," or, "I don't know
Mm,
what my passion is," or,
right.
"Oh, I wish I were being more that way with my kids, my poor kids." Listen, this is it really we all just need to give ourselves so much space and grace and
Yes.
compassion. We're all figuring it out. We all have areas where we wish we were doing things a little better or a little differently. And the good news is, like every day right now in this moment is a chance, right? To say, okay, what's one step I can take toward whatever it is I want to be possible?
Yes, I love that. Taking the little steps can add up over time, right? And I think that there's seasons we all go through, right? Like right now, I would love to be diving more into my business than I'm able to because my kids have
Mhm.
been nonstop sick, right? And so I
Mhm.
really have to lean
Mhm.
into that. I am full blown mom mode, like
Mhm.
100% at
Mhm.
this point, right?
Mhm.
And so it's like there are those
Mhm.
seasons. So I understand the idea of balance, but I also think it's not in the traditional sense where we're always going to be perfectly balanced
Mhm.
all the time,
Mhm.
right? It's going to be more of right now my priority is more my kids and taking care of their illnesses and taking care of what that. And then maybe in a couple months or a couple weeks I get to slide a little bit more over here where I'm still prioritizing my kids, but I have more time for my business or my passions or whatever that might look like. So is that something that you kind
Yes.
of agree with the idea of balance?
Absolutely, and the way that I think about it is, so when I'm working with my clients, they're building a coaching business,
Yeah.
and many of the coaches that come to me are they have their family life as a very high priority. That's why they're
Yes.
attracted to the work I do, right?
Right.
So the first thing we do is we take a look at creating what is your ideal life business vision. right?
Mm,
And there's a lot that goes into that, and I won't get into all of it here, but one of the key pieces of it is remembering that your personal life, your family life, all of those parts and your business are not in competition with each other because it
mhm.
seems that way, right? It's kind of
Right.
like I have to pick. But
Yep.
one way to think about it that's really helpful is to think my business and my personal life are part of the bigger picture, which is my overall experience of life, what I'm creating, and who I am. And I
Mm,
think sometimes when we can think about it that way, and we see that my business and my personal life are in cooperation with one another,
mhm,
it makes all the difference, right? Because what it
mhm.
means is, and then the other piece is, and I can speak more to this if you would like as well about how we do prioritize and shift things around like that.
Yeah.
But what it does when we're really clear on that idea that these two things are in support of one another, then right when the kids are sick and when it's pulling your attention there, instead of thinking, oh no, this is taking away from my business, it
Mm,
can allow you to think, okay, how is this very experience in support of how I'm moving my business forward? What can I
mm.
learn from this that I can maybe implement and give to my clients, right? And so there are always opportunities to see how whatever you're experiencing or facing in either area is actually in support of the other area, and how it really is part of the bigger picture of you honoring your own personal priorities and values in the big picture
Yes.
of your life.
Yes. Oh gosh, that's really powerful because I feel like that is a huge mindset shift, right?
Yes,
But those
yes.
mindset shifts need to happen in order for the action to follow, right? And I would love for
Mhm,
you to give maybe some tips on, okay, we've had this mindset shift. Now we're moving forward with the idea that this is in cooperation, they're supporting
mm,
one another. So then when we do have these things come up, how do you
mhm,
recommend kind of shifting things around and
mhm,
reprioritizing stuff?
mhm. Well, one thing I think is extremely important for everyone, but especially moms to do is to build in some flex time. So this is kind
Mm,
of how I think about it. I think that if we're to take any given day, any given week or month or set of 3 months. And we were to say track the amount of, like, I'm using these air quotes, right? Like unexpected things that come up. It's
yeah.
typically about the same amount of unexpected things, right?
Mhm.
Whether it's
Yeah.
that, a kid needs you to take something to the school or they're sick or
Mhm.
whatever it is. And
Right.
and certainly this is going to ebb and flow. But if we it can be an interesting experiment just to track the amount of those things that come up and
Mhm.
actually plan that as time dedicated to those extra things, so we're building in flex time, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, because in truth, those things come up, and when something like that does come up, and our interpretation of it is, "Oh, no, I wasn't expecting this. This is going to put me behind." It's
Mhm.
never a helpful thing for us.
Right.
Whereas when those things come up and instead we realize, oh, unexpected things happen. It's
Mhm.
expected that they do, ironically,
Right.
right? So how do I attend to this and then work with all this flex time that I've put in to adjust my schedule? And so
Yeah.
part of it is building in that flexible time. And the
Mhm.
other thing is really just shifting even that mindset that
Mhm.
the plan was never supposed to go as expected. We make the
Mhm.
plan and then
Mhm.
we adjust over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. That baseline is there for us to kind of have a starting place, but then, yeah, as things come in and change, we have to have that flexibility to say, "Okay." And I liked what you said because it kind of lends to the idea of being really curious, right? Like,
Yes.
oh, that instead of like just being defeated or feeling like, okay, now I'm going to be behind and, this just gets our anxiety up and we just start, having that negative self talk, instead becoming curious about, okay, how could I adjust what I was doing last week to maybe incorporate more of that flex time? Or can I create a system that makes this a little easier for me to off put that particular piece of my business and make it more automated or whatever that might
Yes.
be, getting that curiosity going instead of feeling so out of control,
Yes.
and finding ways we can get back in control when those
Yes.
unexpected things come up.
Yeah, and one of the things I don't think we realize as women how often we actually have some nervous system activation going
Ooh,
on.
yes.
And so, I mean, really, and so, when I work with my coaches and help them to be effective, this is one of the things that we talk about because how can we help other people to be more effective? How can we be more effective when we have our nervous system activation hijacking the part of our brain that is able
Yeah.
to problem solve and make smart decisions? So in
Yep.
practical terms, what this looks like is, right? I'm working away and I have my tasks for the day and I think this is
Mhm.
amazing. I'm on fire. My business is going so well. And then a demand gets thrown on me or I get a call
Mm.
from the school or whatever, right? It can be very easy for us to go into a bit of a like heightened state, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes
Yeah.
even that sense of panic. It's like, oh
Mhm.
my gosh, right? And then we start believing that we're behind and how am I going to do all of this? And what happens is this really ineffective pattern that we do automatically. We don't have to judge ourselves for it. It just is true. It's a
Mhm.
very ineffective pattern where we are doing more, going faster, trying to squeeze it all in, and it's always going to put us behind. We think that if
Mm.
we move faster and shove it in that we'll get it all done, but actually what's going to happen is our work will be sloppy or we will take
Mhm.
on more than we possibly can or we will exhaust ourselves and it will put us behind. And
Yeah.
so I think that being really part of the value in shifting this mindset and bringing that curiosity is we're actually building in a pause where we can kind of breathe and feel grounded for a minute and think,
Mm.
okay, how am I going to problem solve within this? Right.
Right.
And that's when those solutions open up. And we might realize, you know what? It's not the end of the world if I move this thing to a later time. Or
Yeah.
how can I delegate? How can I take something off my list? What's
Mm.
most important? And so
Right.
just that mindset shift of realizing when things come up, it's not an accident, it's not really unexpected, but instead, how do I solve for this? Knowing that my personal life and business fit together, it allows us to stay more calm and grounded and it allows us to just problem solve, right? And
Yeah.
that's how we move forward in our business more smoothly and more quickly too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Definitely leaning into more of that CEO mindset instead of like
Yes.
the I have a busy work and I'm just gonna make myself push through this and then now I'm
Yes.
burnt out and I have no energy to do the work that I needed to do later in the week because I'm done.
That's right. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes it can be very tricky because we can think, especially as high achieving women,
Mm.
we can think, well, you know what? I'm really good at getting through a to-do list, like when the pressure's on,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like, yeah, but let's wait a minute. Let's take a,
Mm.
a, a step back and look at this because I know I can say for myself, yeah, I can fake it pretty well. I can get a lot done, but mark my
Yeah.
words, I'm going to end up with a migraine. I'm going to be
Mhm.
exhausted. I'm going to end up, being in a space where I am stress reacting, right? Like later I may
Yeah.
be scrolling or, eating just because I'm,
Mhm.
so overwhelmed. And I mean, that's not going to be effective. That's not going to move me forward as CEO, right?
Right, right. Yeah, totally. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I feel like, as entrepreneurs, we're already in that bucket of, more high achieving, wanting to, push ourselves, wanting to, have that success or whatever, and so we're
Mhm.
really prone to more of those uh tendencies, and being
Yes.
aware of that is really, really important. And as an ADHDer too, like that doesn't help either, where my executive functioning brain is like, nope, like you
I
haven't given me
know,
any
right?
breathing time. So now we're gonna just yeah, we're gonna just sabotage everything.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I know. Oh my gosh, right. We throw all these fun things in the mix and
Yeah.
at my house, so right now my middle son he's away from home, but my oldest and my daughter are here. All three of us have ADHD and
Yeah.
I mean, it's just comical. We can be
Yeah.
having a conversation and sometimes we just laugh because we're all kind of having a different conversation all together at the same time.
Right. Oh my gosh, the dynamic of
Mm.
an ADHD house,
Oh
it's
my
so
gosh,
funny.
right?
My oldest is also diagnosed as well, and it's just like, we can relate to each other so much, which I think is another wonderful thing because it's like,
Yeah.
okay, taking my own experiences and wanting to shift that for my own kids and being able to learn, you know, through the masking that we've had to do all of our lives and wanting something better for our kids. It just is another one
Mhm.
of those pieces of, you know
Mhm.
what, like you wanted to talk about too at one point, you are the perfect parent for your child, right? And it's like
Yes.
embracing
Yes.
that concept is really beautiful and powerful.
Yes. Yes.
Mm,
I mean, it really is because, I think that again, as high achievers
mm,
and as women and moms in general, we are fed so many ideas about the way we're supposed to be a mom.
yeah.
And so
Mhm.
many things like it should come naturally to us. I
Ugh.
should be this
Mm,
way. I should be that way. I should be more organized. And it's kind of like it's just sometimes, I wish I could go back to that new
mm,
mom when I
mhm.
first brought that baby home and give a more empowering message, and
Yeah.
it's kind of like so yeah, I mean, all of you listening, I think it can be a very helpful exercise to go through. This is one of the things in my book that I encourage moms to do, which
Yeah.
is make a list of the mom list. Like being a good mom is all of
Mhm,
these things, right? And this list can just be endless. And
mhm,
then I think it's a great idea to go through and notice the things on that list that are actually things that someone else thinks you should be doing, but don't actually
mhm.
matter to you, right? Maybe your
Yeah.
neighbor, your mother or mother in law, or friend, or this, whatever, right? So,
Mhm.
what someone else thinks you should be doing. And then what things on that list are there just because you assume they're true, but actually those things don't really matter to you.
Yeah.
And when you can clear that stuff out, you can typically identify the things about being a mom that actually matter to you. And
Yeah.
they're typically things that are very easy and natural to you as well.
Mhm,
And so
mhm.
I often think it's those other things that crowd the list that take away from that. And so,
Yeah.
I know for me, I can just say, um, we could be here all day talking about the laundry list of things I thought I was supposed to do and the ways I thought I was supposed to be. But what has ended up being really the magic in my parenting with my kids is, you know, just loving them and being with
Mm.
them and
Yeah.
seeing them for who they are as individuals and
Yeah.
making sure that they always know that who they are is important, right?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
those things that I've said, they have nothing to do with meals, they have
Mm.
nothing to do with schedules, they have
Yeah.
nothing to do with all of these things. And yet, those things are the things that matter. And I've
Yeah.
never been a, perfect parent, and I can say that I have a great relationship with my kids, and I'm
Yeah.
really grateful that and that is in part, right, from clearing out the noise and just being with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that so much because there is, I talk about this all the time with that societal concept of this is what a perfect mom is. This is what a good mom does. And, we get that noise in our head and then things don't resonate with us sometimes with those expectations. But and then we start thinking, oh, what's wrong with me then? I'm broken. I'm not a good
Yes.
enough mom because these are things that I struggle with. Or I imagined my postpartum looking this certain way and it didn't happen. And so now, like, I'm
Yeah.
done, right? Like,
Yeah.
this is a terrible, I'm a horrible mom, all these terrible things that we start telling ourselves. And in
Yeah.
reality, we need to just stop shoulding ourselves. I always say,
Mhm.
there's no
Mhm.
shoulding anymore. We're not shoulding
Mhm.
anymore. We're going to
Mhm.
say, this is what I deserve and this is what I desire. And I am going to follow that and prioritize the connection with my child, with my baby over any
Mhm.
of the noise, like you called it, because I think
Mhm.
that that
Mhm.
piece is truly, like you said, the most important part is
Yes.
that connection. Mhm.
Yes. And, a couple things, I I can share a story that's like a little vulnerable that was a good wake up
Yes.
call for me as a mom. So I'll do that in a minute. But
Yeah.
before I forget, in what's ironic, like in the beginning of my book, like the introduction, it's like it's talking about setting expectations for the book, right? And one
Yeah.
of the things I say is I find it incredibly ironic that I'm setting the expectation here, setting the stage of what to expect,
Mm-hmm.
because when you enter motherhood, it's never what you expect, right?
Ever.
And I talk in that book about how I had my first child, and let me tell you, Jessi, I thought I'm like, I am in it to win it. Like, I was so excited to be a mom. I always wanted to be a mom. It's a
Mm,
thing, something that's very close to my heart. Then I have this baby. I bring him home from the hospital. He's colicky. He's not sleeping. I
yeah.
wasn't sleeping. I had a headache around the clock. He was
Yeah.
in the hospital at 9 weeks old. He was on breathing treatments. And it was
Oh,
just like, oh my gosh, how am I so bad at something that I thought I was meant to do? Right. And I
right.
see now, looking back at that poor, ragged mom, that I
Yeah.
wasn't doing a terrible job. Right. But I
Right.
just think it's worth mentioning because all of you listening, no matter what you're experiencing, it isn't ever what you expect. And I think
Right.
that the greatest gift that you and that we can all give ourselves is like give yourself a little bit of credit and focus on what you're doing well because it's
Yes.
not easy. It's just not
Right.
easy. Yeah.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be the big things, right? It can be the small things you're doing well and, really celebrating those tiny wins and, having that shift in thought around, okay, this was really hard. I
Yep.
I'm really struggling right now and allowing yourself to feel that and
Yep.
then making space for the and I was able to, get him to fall asleep finally, in the bassinet, even if it was only for
Mhm.
5 minutes. That's a win. Like
Mhm.
finding those
Mhm.
little wins and making room for
Mhm.
both of those
Mhm.
feelings
Mhm.
without shoving them down, right? Because that's not healthy
Mhm.
either.
Mhm.
Is really, really something we all deserve to do for
Yeah.
ourselves.
And taking care of yourself. And I know we hear
Yes.
this, and I think a lot of the pushback that moms give a lot is, well,
Mm,
it would be nice, but I just
yeah.
can't because they need things. But
Right.
I'm going to push back on that because, you know, like I look at my first child and I honestly had a headache
Mm,
going in between a bad headache and a migraine headache, bouncing back and
oh,
forth between those 2 headache options for
yeah.
months, for
Oh,
months. It was
debilitating.
I mean, it really was, and it
Yeah.
was like, "Hang in there, keep it up," right? I'm
Hmm.
nursing, I'm just trying to do all the things, and then fast forward, and I mean, I'll say this with the caveat that my 3rd child did not have the same challenges physically with allergies and sleep, and I'd also figured
Hmm.
some things out, right? But it's
Right.
like I remember so I had my daughter and I had this system, right? So it was like, okay, I feed her at 8 o'clock, and then
Mm,
I had a bed in her room. I would feed her, I would go to bed. And then
mhm.
my husband would feed her, a bottle, and it could be, whatever. Everyone's choice is different, right? Whether it's
Right.
formula or pumped milk or whatever, right? And he would stay up, he would feed her, and so by the time I woke up, I had, like, a stretch of sleep that was, like, 5 or 6 hours, and it
Yeah.
was everything for me.
Yes.
Everything,
Yes.
and,
Mm,
everyone's different, but for me, like, having that much sleep was the difference maker between me having headaches and me not having headaches, and so it's like,
absolutely.
looking back, right, it's true that with the first baby, the situation was different, all of that was
Mm,
different, and I think it would have been worth it for me to figure out a way that I could get the sleep that I needed because
yes.
it matters so much. So whatever if you're needing more help and support and it seems impossible, try to bring a little bit more of a solution focused approach because your well-being matters so much.
Oh my gosh, yes. That's the whole premise of my platform. And I
Mhm.
couldn't agree with what you said more because it is so true that when we it's and people ask me, "Well, how can you plan for postpartum?" Like, anything can happen. You don't know how your birth's gonna go. You don't know what issues the baby might have, and that's all true. But what we can plan for is the support that surrounds us so that
Yes.
we can make time for our self-care. What self-care or soul-care really means to us. Like, and a lot
Yes.
of time it's going back to basics. Like you said, prioritizing sleep, prioritizing our nutrition, having all of these things that are fueling our body and are nurturing our body so that we can be more present with our children. We can have the energy we need to care for them despite the unknowns, right?
Yes. 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 And, you said, I actually can't remember which word you said, but I'm going to say both: nurturing self,
Mhm.
nourishing self. Like,
Yes,
I think those words, because sometimes our self care plan can actually feel like a list of things to do and more like a
yes.
burden. And
Mhm.
so I just think for all of you, when you think about even your plan, right, can be committing that you will nurture and nourish yourself and your needs, whatever that is. So
Right.
maybe it's chatting with a friend every day. Maybe that is part of the best self-care you can do, right? So just the
Yeah.
more open we can be as to what that actually looks like, and making those decisions from a place of asking ourselves, what do I need? What do I
Mhm.
really need? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, really, really checking in with ourselves and letting our bodies inform what we are needing, right? And really trying to
Mhm.
embody that, okay, I'm gonna be really in my body and really feel what I need, like those headaches, right? That was your body trying to give you,
Yes.
feedback. I need sleep. I need, whatever it was. And so it's like we're
Yes.
so used to ignoring our body. Like,
Oh
be
my
quiet.
gosh, right?
I know, but I don't have time for
Yes.
that. I don't have time for I can't get
Yes.
up for 2 minutes while the baby's crying to go pee, right? Like
Yeah.
I have to be
Yeah.
nap trapped for 2 hours even though my bladder is gonna explode. No,
Yeah.
no, we don't have to do that,
Yeah.
right? Like, who's
Yeah.
saying we
Yeah.
have to do that? It's this pressure that comes from all around us, but also within us. And so it's like honoring our needs, prioritizing our self-care, even if it's the basic self-care, is really what's going to allow us to flourish in the postpartum time frame,
Yes.
heal deeply, be able to balance our hormones more quickly. All of these things are connected. They're interconnected for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's see. I know we had a couple other things that we really wanted to touch on for today's episode. And one of the things I think, you were wanting to discuss is really embracing motherhood as this opportunity for personal growth. And so I'd love for you to
Mhm.
kind of give a little bit of your insights there.
Oh my gosh. So
Mm,
I just so in the work that I do now with
mm,
coaches, I help them to, one of the things we talk about is we're talking about not only their skills, but we talk about different subsets of clients they will work with. And
yeah.
actually, right now, as we speak, yesterday, I was working with them because we are on our motherhood, parenting, and family life segment of the training, right?
Okay. Uh-huh.
And so it's like, we were talking about, sorry, my brain is going so many places right now.
No,
I
you're
want to make sure that I'm articulating this in and keeping within the question. Ask me the question again so that I make sure I keep this really focused.
Yeah. No, and if there's something more important that you
Yeah.
wanted to touch on, that's fine too. But really, just the idea of embracing motherhood as this opportunity for growth for ourselves and
Yes,
where
yes.
those opportunities can be found. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Okay. Um so just yesterday we were talking about these different issues that come up with their clients who are moms,
Yeah.
and fear of making sure that our kids succeed,
Yes. Oh,
struggling with our kids
mm,
being unhappy,
yeah.
pouting, throwing fits, struggling when our kids don't have good manners. So
Yeah.
all these things, right, within motherhood. And what we were talking about, and this is the area where my coaches can really help moms in this way, is that underneath all of those, it's kind of like, I think of these things as places where we have like a tight grip,
Yeah.
right? Like child misbehaves, or child has emotions, or child like doesn't meet a marker of success or whatever it
Yeah.
is. And it's like we can kind of cling to it, and it
Mm,
activates something emotionally for us, right?
yeah.
So usually those things are somehow connected and related to our own fear of
Mhm.
not being enough, of not being adequate, right? It's like
Yeah.
there is a very unique connection between parents and children and mothers and children. And so like I call this kind of this like parent child entanglement that kind of happens. And it sounds
Yeah.
really bad and negative and unhealthy, but the truth is it's just very common.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's like I think the reason why there's so much opportunity is when I have something like that come up, rather than thinking I need to go in and fix this and change my child, it's a great
Mm.
opportunity to just pause and kind of find out what's going on for me here,
Mhm.
and maybe I'm feeling a little afraid that I'm not going to do a good job as a mom. Maybe I'm
Mm.
fearful that I'm inadequate. Maybe I'm bringing my past experience and kind of dumping it on my kid in this way.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I feel like it opens up a space of a lot of self-reflection, a lot of
Yes.
healing for ourselves, and just really some self-discovery and peace that can happen along the way as we work through that stuff with our kids.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
I completely agree. Motherhood's this opportunity for healing, right? It's from
Yes.
healing our own experiences as children, for healing our own, reactions and emotional regulation that we might be
Mhm.
lacking, right? And it's like
Mhm.
we're
Mhm.
able to, as we are teaching our children, we're reparenting ourselves in a way where it's like, okay, here's a learning opportunity for me after this emotional outburst happened with my kid. Like, what am I making this about me? And I love that
Mhm.
you said the self-reflection piece, because
Mhm.
I think that
Mhm.
that is so true. I have not learned more about myself in any other time of my life than since I've become a parent.
Oh my gosh. It is like it's like the ultimate, and well, and the
Yeah.
topic of this conversation specifically about
Yes.
motherhood and business, I feel like these are the 2 areas that challenge us the most to
Mm.
grow.
Mhm.
Because as a mom, right, it's like you are facing your biggest fears. You're responsible for another human being, right? And it
Oh,
drudges
yeah.
up so much. And then when you're building a business, it's like, okay, this is requiring me to believe in myself more, see something that's possible, do something I've never done. It's like, okay, listen, those of you listening, if you're a mom and you have a business, you're taking most uh the 2 biggest things you can have, and you're doing them at the same time, so pat
Yeah.
yourself on the back. This is a big deal.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
That motivation, that, it's just something that I don't know, it's an interesting concept to tackle those 2 huge things, at the same time, and how
Yes.
in some ways, though, they, like you said before, they can fuel one another and they can really nurture one another, as long as we have that idea at the beginning that you said, that they're not in competition, right? They
Yeah, yeah,
actually support one another in some ways. And so,
yeah.
absolutely, give yourself a pat on the back, like you said, Molly, that you are brave enough to go on this journey, and
Yes.
you're doing a great
Yeah,
job. You're doing a
yeah.
great job.
And have support. I mean, that's the
Yeah,
thing. I
yes.
know it's easy to, I sit here and say, "Oh, my kids are grown," and, it can come
Mm,
across like everything is so easy and I handle all this.
right.
And in truth, I have a lot of support, right? I always have a coach that helps me with my feelings, my personal
Yeah,
stuff that comes up. I have coaches and
absolutely.
mentors that give me guidance. And so that's the
Mhm.
other thing. It's like we are on this earth to be with people. We are here to connect. We are
Yes.
here to learn from each other. So, mm,
Absolutely, and there's no more vulnerable time than motherhood, right? Where we need
yes.
that village, and it is not automatically built, right? And
No,
so
it
it's
is not.
one of the work that I do a lot with my clients, is curating that postpartum village of support and making it very eclectic, right? There's going to be
Mhm.
things that you need across the board. Like you said, it's a holistic thing that we have to focus on, and really trying to do that before we're in the trenches and we're drowning
Yep.
and we feel like we're isolated. That's where the power and the empowerment comes in, for sure.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, right, because you become a mom and that can be isolating. And then, if those listening that have an online business, sometimes that can be
Mm,
very isolating. I remember at one
yes.
point joking that I was like a life coach with no life because I was
Yeah,
like, I'm just by myself doing this, right? And so
right?
so
Yeah,
it's like, yeah, we've got to make sure we're attending to all of our needs mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, all of it. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, and if anybody listening, if you have questions that you want to ask, even if we can't get to it right now on the live, I will see those come through on the broadcast. So, we're more than happy to circle back around and answer any questions you might have. But with the remaining minutes here that we have left of the show, I would love, Molly, for you to just let us know like one last piece of advice or maybe one of your favorite mantras about motherhood or being a mom and an entrepreneur. What would that one piece of advice be that you want to leave everyone with?
Yeah. So I go back to something I shared earlier, which is give yourself the gift of really creating a very clear vision for yourself
Mm,
of what your ideal life and business vision is. And
yeah.
I'm talking crystal clear. Like, what are the hours that you work? What are the hours you
Mm,
do not work? What types of activities are you doing in your business because they light you up? What are
mhm,
the things in your personal life that are absolute non negotiables as far as
yeah.
important things to be a part of or to have in your life? And
Yeah.
so, the more specific you can get visually, verbally, everything about what you ultimately want and ground yourself there, that is the secret. When I
Yeah.
started my business, I was just becoming a single mom. I'd been married for 15 years. I had 3 kids. I was healing from chronic fatigue syndrome. I was terrified about money. I was
Mm,
overwhelmed about building a business. And I said, my kids are going to have a mom.
mm,
I'm going to
yeah.
create the freedom, time, and flexibility to be with them and to be there. And I am going to provide well for them. And
Hmm.
building a business and doing all that, it's not easy. And there are about a million times and ways you could be discouraged and quit. But when you are clear on what you are wanting, it allows you to move forward through those challenges no matter what. That's my biggest recommendation.
Oh, I love that. That is so beautiful and so very true. So thank you so much for that encouragement.
Yeah, yeah,
I
it's
know I'm
hard, it
taking
can be
that to
hard.
heart.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and if you would mind just letting us know where can people connect with you out in the big world of the internet?
Sure, yeah. So for the mom space, I've already mentioned it. The Happy Mom Mindset is my book.
Mhm.
You just get it on Amazon and it has a
Okay.
workbook. You've absolutely got to get the workbook. The good thing is I have a free digital version if you prefer that. I think getting the one to write in is like the best way to do it. So
Yeah.
honestly, it's really going to be helpful for you. So the Happy Mom Mindset is my book for moms. If anyone listening is a coach and you might be interested in my master coach training or other programs to build your business, you can just find me at mollyclaire.com. I'm on Instagram, Molly Claire Coaching. And also, I host the Masterful Coach podcast, where I
Okay.
talk about coaching skills and also this ideal life and business balance. So those are the ways that you can find me out there in the big wide world of online stuff.
Perfect. Well,
So
thank you so much. This has been such an insightful conversation. I feel like we've given amazing value on just, what we can do to really embrace motherhood and embrace our entrepreneurial fire and not let it dim, just
mhm,
because we are now in parenthood. And so
yeah,
yeah, I just think this is such a beautiful conversation. So thank you so much again, Molly, for joining me. And
thank
everybody
you.
watching, just as a reminder, empowering postpartum coaching guides new and pregnant moms through the transition into motherhood so that they can bond with their baby without sacrificing their own self care. And if this is something you are wanting for your postpartum, shoot me a DM on Instagram. You can see my handle here. It's at empowering_postpartum, and we can chat about how I can help support you through your journey. And remember, this show can also be heard on the Spanglish Radio Network. And please check out spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. And we will all see you again back here next week for another episode of Empowering Postpartum. Thank you so much.